Hello and welcome to a new Career Konnect interview. Today I have with me Siddharth, who works at the intersection of research, practice and teaching within the science communication field. He's doing science and technology studies, education and social justice, and he is based in India. He currently works as an independent consultant and teaches science communication courses at multiple academic institutions. He's also the founder of the SciComm Club in India, which is a flagship initiative for engaging with the science of science communication, and he serves on the scientific committee of the Public Communication, Science and Technology Network as the co-chair of its Diversity, Equity, Inclusion and Accessibility Committee. Welcome, Siddharth.
Thank you so much, Sarah.
Hello. So to get started, can you just briefly explain to our audience, how did you get interested in science communication?
I think I got interested in science communication quite serendipitously. It wasn't something that I had planned or thought about very deeply. I was doing a bachelor's degree in science in India, and I worked in a molecular biology laboratory for a while. And even though I was really keen and eager to pursue basic science and fundamental research, I realized after my degree and my experiences working in the laboratory that I wasn't really enjoying it as much. So the idea, and I had already applied for master's and PhD courses abroad and even got into a few. But I think I just felt like I needed a break. So it was meant to be a sabbatical. And during that period, so also to add as a precursor is that even though I've been trained in science, I've always been interested in the humanities as well. And I find this dichotomy between science and humanities to be a false dichotomy, and it's not always useful. So, unfortunately, courses in India, you have to pick one over the other, and it's very hard to combine the two. So, when I finally completed my degree in science, I was still keen on learning and experiencing subjects in the humanities. And I thought that becoming a science communicator would be an ideal way to use my background and knowledge in science and to apply it in terms of communication related projects. So I think it happened quite organically. I didn't really think much about it. I did attend a workshop on science journalism that made me aware that there is a field called science journalism or science communication, and that you could actually earn a living out of it. So that was my first introduction. But I think after I finished that workshop, also, I spent a few months thinking about what I really wanted to do in my sabbatical for a year. And I felt that doing science communication would be a fun way to spend a year. Little did I know that I will actually end up working in it for the rest of my life so far. And I haven't gone back to doing basic research since. So, yeah, that's how I got into SciComm.
Yeah, it's very interesting. Very similar to, again, what many people experience. Just, getting your feet wet and then you're kind of stuck with the field. So what motivates you to do science communication? Why are you doing this? Why did you not go back to basic research?
Right. So, I mean, there are two layers of motivation that I would like to point out. So, the first one is personal, is that when I was pursuing a degree in science, I realized that most of academic or research in science is very depth oriented in the sense that you specialize in one field and you go deeper and deeper, and you're expected to become an expert in a very niche area, and you go deep in one area. Whereas I thought that I was someone who always, since my childhood days, always wanted to flutter like a butterfly. And I always valued the breadth of science or the breadth of knowledge way more than the depth. And and I think that's completely fine to actually get an expertise or get a specialization in something which is a lot more broader. So I actually like looking at the bird's eye view of science rather than the worm's eye view of science. And so I felt like science communication, I discovered actually, I didn't really think about it when I joined science communication. In the pursuit of doing science communication, I realized that this was the perfect way for me to actually hop from one scientific topic to the other, connect ideas and connect the dots between different kinds of knowledge that we are surrounded by. And it also allowed me to do something new and learn something new every day. So there was a personal motivation that it really appealed to me because not because I didn't like going deep into a topic, it's just that I like connecting the dots between things that don't seemingly connect on the surface. So that was the personal motivation. And the more social motivation was that I really feel like knowledge should be more accessible. And right now, knowledge in academia is really in an ivory tower. It's not accessible to people. And in countries like India, especially, scientific research is predominantly funded by taxpayers' money. So there's also a moral or an ethical obligation that, the research that is being funded by taxpayer money is also accessible to all the citizens of the country. But even beyond that moral obligation, I feel like there are so many opportunities and there's so much knowledge and opportunities that people miss out on because they don't really have the means and the opportunities to access this knowledge, right? So if you've heard of the term called science capital, in India, there is really very, very wide disparities between the science capital of different people, which is basically how much exposure to science they have when they're growing up and how many opportunities they have. And I really feel like there's a lot of lost potential because we're not really sharing our science with people who could benefit from it. So yeah, I think those are the two motivations.
Yeah, that's good. And you figured all of that out while you were still working as a researcher, or did that come over time? How did that work for you?
So I mean, I stopped being a researcher in the natural sciences when I left my degree. But after I started doing science communication as a practitioner, as a professional, I realized in a few years that there was a lot of just doing science communication for the sake of doing it and feeling good about it. But there was very little measurement of impact or evaluation of what actually it was doing or whether it was really having the intended effect that it was meant to have, right? So I think I started looking up research papers and trying to learn more about evidence-based ways of doing science communication. And I also did a master's in science communication, which exposed me to a lot of theory and frameworks in science communication. So I think the combination of that, and also when I came back to India, I really felt like I was equipped with a lot of theoretical knowledge about science communication as a field, which was predominantly developed in UK and the US. But when I came to India and I started applying all of that knowledge, I fell on my face and I realized that a lot of those things didn't really work the same way in India as it did in the global north context. So all of these factors organically sort of were driving me to think deeper about and reflect a little bit more about what was I actually doing, what was the point of it, did it really have the impact it was supposed to have? And I think that was how I got back into research because I was trained as a researcher, and I felt like, sure, I've left biology, I've left molecular biology research, but I still know how to collect information and analyze data and process it. So I thought maybe I should get trained as a social science researcher, and I don't really have a formal training in social science, but I just started reading research papers and collaborating with a lot of people, and that's how I got back into research in the social sciences, where I was predominantly looking at how do you design science society relationships and interfaces which work in the global south context or which work in India specifically. And that has been my motivation to get back to research, not in science but in the social sciences. But I still consider myself a researcher. And I mean, it's weird because I don't really have a formal degree or anything, but I keep doing a little bit of research in addition to my practice, in addition to the job I do. And I think that's been an important thing for me to do because I really feel like I'm making progress in learning something new. So I think that's been an important part of what motivates and pushes me to keep going. Yeah.
Okay, that's good. Really nice. And what do you think was your very first or the most important step to get into the science communication field? Once you decided, yeah, you want to explore the field, what was the changing point? And from which you couldn't go back actually? What was it?
Right. So when I decided I want to do this as during my sabbatical for a year, I think I was still dipping my toes into the field and I was checking out whether it's actually a viable career, whether I could make a living out of it. So then I applied for jobs and I got a job in a science outlet, a science media outlet, and I was working there as a content editor. And I think when I was working there and my day-to-day schedule was very exciting. I was working with an exciting set of people. One day I was recording a podcast. The second day I was doing an interview. The third day I was writing a science article, a popular science article. The fourth day I was shooting a video with something, and then I was making infographics. So I think I had a lot of fun, and it was in stark contrast to the dull, monotonous, and rigorous life I had as a research student in the lab, where I was working 15 hours a day and just working in the lab and doing pipetting and stuff. And I really had a lot of fun and I genuinely enjoyed it. And I think it was somewhere during those months when I was working as a content editor at my first job that I realized that I didn't want to go back. I wanted to do this for much longer. And I think since then, I've never looked back. I've never considered going back to doing a PhD in biology, for example. Even though a lot of people have told me that, oh, you should do a PhD and you're wasting your potential and you could be doing so much more. And there's always people who
Really?
disagree.
What do you respond to them? What's the response to that?
Um, I think I just didn't feel like I was meant to do it, and I think I was not ready to do a PhD at that time. And it's been about a decade since I graduated from my course, and I think finally I'm ready to do a PhD, but in social science to study science communication more rigorously and theoretically. But it's taken me 10 years of working in the field to actually know why I want to do a PhD, what do I want to do a PhD in, and how will I benefit from doing it? And if I had done a PhD 10 years ago, I think I would have been completely lost and I would have probably quit or finished my PhD somehow and then stumbled into science communication. So I think it's okay that I haven't done my PhDs until my 30s. And I think I made the right call. I've never regretted my decision of moving into science communication. There was a set of serendipitous things that happened one after the other that led me to it. But there was also a lot of reflection and thinking about whether I want to do this. And I think if there's one thing in my life that I've never regretted, it's been transitioning into SciComm. And it's difficult to find jobs in India in SciComm. There aren't that many. There are difficulties, of course, and I'm not saying it's not all rosy, but I think it's worth the fight. So I think I've enjoyed my time doing what I'm.
Nice. I'm really happy to hear that. It's really good. Very, very inspiring. Okay, so now that we talked about your way into science communication, let's talk about what you do actually now. So you said, or we know that you're a consultant. How did you get started in that area, and what do you actually do as a consultant?
So I think I'm quite new to the consulting thing, but while I was in my previous few jobs, I have been consulting on the side for creating lots of science communication outputs or teaching a course in science communication or conducting workshops for PhD students. So I think I have been doing a little bit of consulting on the side, but have not been a full-time consultant. It's only been a month since I left my last job and I've become a full-time consultant and I'm still figuring my way out. So I don't really know how I became one and what am I going to do. So I think it's too early for me to answer that. But I think the reason I want to be a consultant is that I think working for an organization is great in many ways because you have stability, you have organizational structures, you have a lot of systemic things that you can really build on, and you have a lot more funding, of course. But it's also limiting in certain ways because you are at the end of the day not being completely practical and you're not being completely unbiased because at the end of the day you are working for an organization and your work is to market their science. Maybe market is not the right word, but it's about um, basically upscaling the give me a moment. So it's basically about selling the institution's image and public relations to the world at large, right? So you're still working with a client where you have to really keep your biases aside and work for what's best for them. But when I work as an independent consultant, I can do a lot more critical work, whether it's teaching or research, and I can actually be a lot more unbiased and I can be a lot more critical which maybe being in a full-time job does not allow me to do. So I think that's the reason I really want to be a consultant. And I'm also realizing that the ecosystem in India right now, in terms of science communication, is very biased in terms of having lots of opportunities at the entry level, but there aren't that many jobs and opportunities at the mid and senior level. So, given that I've been in the field for 10 years, I think I'm really finding it challenging to find jobs and opportunities that I like to do and I would be happy doing, but also is aligned with my goals and does not really ask me to do things that I was doing 10 years ago. So I think it's been challenging because the field is quite bottom heavy in the sense that science communication for most institutions or employers means doing social media, website, writing articles, or creating multimedia content. But there hasn't been as much opportunities in science communication to teach, to build strategies, to build ecosystems, to build institutions, to build capacity, to build policy, for example. And these are things that while I had a full-time job, I have tried really my best to do as much as I can on the periphery. But I think I want to actually devote more of my time in doing these things because this is what will make and grow the ecosystem in India for science communication in the long term. And I think uh, there are only a handful of people, and everybody knows each other. There's only a handful of people in India who are at the same stage, who started at the same time as me. And I think I feel like it's our collective responsibility to try and help the people who are coming after us and make it easier for them. So I think, yeah, I do want to spend more time developing systems, capacities, and infrastructure in science communication. Yeah.
Very nice. So you mentioned like collaborations and networking quite a lot while you were talking now. Well, how important do you figure these things are? Like how important is it to know the science communication field in India or the global community? How did it help you?
Absolutely. So I think one of the most useful and helpful things I've discovered in my career has been collaborating and networking. Every job that I've got in science communication has been because I've networked, I have reached out to people on LinkedIn or Twitter, I have got on a call with them, I have told them that I can do this and have traveled. In terms of my research, also, I think most of my research is collaborative in the sense that I work with science communication researchers from across the world. I also work for an organization called the Public Communication of Science and Technology Network. It's an international organization it's a non-profit organization which has about 1,000 to 2,000 science communicators across the world who meet every 2 years at a conference. And I think so. This organization also has been quite pivotal in my growth as a professional in this field because I've discovered a lot of people who have similar interests, who want to do similar things in terms of research, teaching, and capacity building. Which in India, I think there are people, but they're very few and far in between. And given that ecosystems like in countries like the UK or US or Europe is actually much more evolved in science communication, I've actually found a lot more synergy and like-minded people there. And I actually enjoy working with them because it's been a delight working with most of my collaborators because they're so genuinely, helpful. They share credit. They send opportunities my way. They take my name when I'm not in the room. They really appreciate and give critical inputs and feedback. And I really enjoy working with them because it's genuinely a very collaborative field. And it's actually starkly quite in contrast with the scientific research field, where there's a lot of competition. People are rushing and competing with each other to get authorship. I have never had to ask for authorship in any SciComm research I've done. It's always that people insist that, oh, you had done this, and I would insist that you get authorship. And I would say that no, I don't think I've done enough, and it's fine if you don't want to, share authorship with me. But people actually insist. So I think it's quite nice to be in such a constructive and happy and exciting field where everybody is so genuinely helpful. They share resources, they share credit, they share opportunities with you. And I think I've really enjoyed working with the global SciComm community as well. And I try to go for a conference at least once every year because it's very important for me to meet people and network with them and really sort of share my stories and learn their stories from them. So I think, yeah, collaboration is definitely very critical. Yeah.
Nice. All of this has been incredibly helpful and incredibly inspiring. So the last question then, which would be the one advice that you would give to aspiring science communicators to get started in the field or in the journey?
Okay, so it's gonna be a little controversial, but I would say that communication is really a two-way field. I mean, it's a two-way journey. So you really, really need to learn to listen before you start speaking. A lot of science communicators are very eager to talk and share and come from a position where they understand the science better than their audiences, and that's quite it's expected. But I think there's so much lived experiences, knowledge, indigenous ways of knowing and understanding the world that's out there. And there's so much that we can learn by listening as well. So I would really encourage everybody who's starting in the field to learn to really listen before they speak. And I think that has been the mantra for me to also become a good science communicator. Because the more I listen to my audiences, the more I understand where they're coming from, and the more I can tailor my communication outputs towards them. And not only that, not just for improving my work, I also learn a lot of things by listening to people. And I think it's been something that it sounds quite simplistic, but it's actually quite profound if you think about it. So listen before you speak, I would say.
Yeah. No, I find that very profound anyway, to build any kind of relationship or connection with people, not just to speak, but also to listen. Very true. Okay, thank you very much for being here with us today, and I hope you all the best. Wish you all the best for your science communication journey, for what's coming next.
Likewise for you. Thank you so much for sharing your time with me, and it was lovely chatting with you. Take care. Bye bye.
Thank you.